Ladies and gentlemen, if you see in the back, they have the blue forms that you can fill out if you'd like to speak tonight. We're allowing speakers 1 minute tonight to speak during this planning session. Thank you very much. Would it be beneficial for the commission to talk now, or would you like to hear what the public has to say first?
I'd be happy to hear what the public has to say.
If that's okay with staff, can we have the public? Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to take them in order here. Val Thomas, you're first. Welcome, Val.
Good evening, Commissioners. I've been a resident of Clarita Canyon for more than 30 years, and I'm very unhappy about this plan. At no point has anyone in Clarita Canyon been consulted on land use. Page 57 of this land use, policy LU 1.2.5, Sand Canyon. Directly below it, policy LU 1.2.6, Placerita Canyon. They're very different. In the present UDC, they're virtually identical. The purpose is to provide for the rural equestrian lifestyle. That's no longer available in Placerita Canyon. Take a look at it. What was in the UDC was arrived at with bilateral negotiation. What you see in front of you is unilateral abrogation. It isn't reasonable, it isn't ethical, it isn't moral. It needs to go back to the drawing boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Okay, next up we have Glenda Bona. Good evening.
Good evening. I am the co-chair of the Calgrove Coalition Corridor, and I just want you to know that we were organized basically, well, partly to influence this planning process with the city. And from my experience, I can tell you that Santa Clarita residents don't want you to bring the city to the suburbs, and they don't want an urban center at Calgrove. But what they do want, from my understanding, is a suburban paradise. Now, that sounds great. I know we have to get real here. Suburban mixed-use projects are the trends, and we know that, and there's some good reasons. Who doesn't want local shops that are nearby, and also, you know, some restaurants that are nice within walking distance? That's great. But as you make plans for the future, we have some requests for you. Please ensure that new developments are well integrated into existing communities. Think hard about density and height. Develop consensus among city planners, developers, and the community regarding development strategies and goals. And we'd also ask that you add some specifics to this plan as it stands now about West Newhall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenda. Sandra Cattell?
Good evening, everyone. I have been a supporter of the city. Some of you know that I've done everything from working on horse trails, bike trails, at the river rally, picking up trash. I've busted my butt for the last 4 years fighting Las Lomas, and when the city wanted to forget about the open space, I went before the council and pleaded and begged on my hands and knees that it be revisited. When the city asked me to work on CEMEX, I've spent the last 2 months, I gave up my vacation, doing things that would assist the city in working on CEMEX. I'm a city supporter, but my city is not supporting me. I live in Placerita Canyon. It's a beautiful, rural, equestrian community. I have horses. I don't live in an eclectic neighborhood. Your plan designates 20% of my neighborhood to become an urban village. You know what? I already live in a village. We know our neighbors. We walk through our neighborhood. We walk our dogs. We walk with our kids. We ride our horses. We ride our golf carts. We know our neighbors. We live in our own village. I have to tell you, there's one thing here that I really want to read and bring up very quickly. For purposes of the land use element, it was necessary to identify areas within the valley that are or will be subject to flooding or excessive noise, and ensure the land use map avoided placing uses in these areas that would be detrimentally affected. I spoke with the city about this. The area that you're designating as the North Newhall specific plan area is in a floodway. Most of it is in a floodway, according to the new FEMA maps. The PUC has denied the access for a Lions Crossing. We don't want a village there. We don't want 20% of our community to become urban. We want to keep our rural equestrian neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cattell, and we do appreciate all you do for this community. Ruth Ann Levinson. Good evening, Ruth Ann.
Chair Berger, Commissioners, my name is Ruth Ann Levison. I'm a Parks Commissioner for the city. I'm on the Sand Canyon Homeowners Board as their communications officer, mouthpiece, meddler, whatever. First, I want to say that I want to thank you for the enormous undertaking that I know staff has been working on for, 5, 6, 7 years now? And I love this new word, ginormous. What a ginormous job you have ahead of you to make sense of this varied community that we all live in. I don't know how you're going to do it. I know in the end, some folks won't be happy. Some folks will be happy, or maybe nobody will be happy, and that'll be a good thing because then it's a good compromise, they say. The one thing I wanted to bring to you tonight, though, for my community, because I live in Sand Canyon and it's a special standards district, and urban center and shopping, and better restaurants all sounds very wonderful to all of us that have been starved for some of those things in this valley for a long time, not so much in recent years, but the two urban centers that you're planning are adjacent to the most prestigious and most rural communities in the Santa Clarita Valley. I don't know how you're going to be able to make it work. And that's what I'm hearing loud and clear from the residents in Sand Canyon. Our Homeowners Association Board is neutral. We're not taking a position. But I know that our community is very, very concerned about a possible Metrolink station adjacent to Sand Canyon with our horses in our rural areas. So I just wanted to bring that. I know I've gotten dozens and dozens of emails and phone calls knowing that I was going to be at this meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that that's the big concern that we have, of course, is that we are so rural and an urban center at our border, it just doesn't make sense to the majority of the community. I don't know how you're going to do it. I remember I had suggested making Lost Canyon one way, only going the other way. You know, there are various mitigations perhaps that you can come up with, but that is the biggest concern from our neighborhood. And I know that our sister community, Clarita Canyon, is a special standards district, and I know that's their problem too with the development on their borders. So I just bring that to your attention, and I wish you good luck and a sense of humor.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. Appreciate it. Mr. Alan Cameron.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. With 1 minute, I will be unable to accord Mr. Berger even a small modicum of the appreciation this community owes to him for his beyond distinguished career as a Santa Clarita City Planning Commissioner. I certainly hope that opportunity presents itself in the setting beyond this evening. As far as the general plan text is concerned, what I'm going to request is labor-intensive but potentially exceptionally beneficial to all of you and to the entire community and everyone else who's interested in the general plan. That would be what I might term a change matrix. or a change analysis overlay, wherein using the base of the present general plan, you have an overlay and an analysis that describes in a conclusionary way as well as in a specific way what the changes are specifically between the existing general plans for both the city and the county and the proposed new plan, so that that change summary can then be used to look at the circulation element, the master plan for parks, and so forth. We are suggesting this evening that we go from a population projection cap of 326,000 people to a population projection cap of 443,000 people, which, of course, does shift all the support infrastructure systems, roads, parks, schools, water supply, sanitation, sewage. So in conclusion, the change matrix, change analysis would be exceptionally beneficial to allow everybody to understand what is transpiring here in the simplest and quickest manner possible. I certainly also would like to thank the staff and Ms. Bogue, who I first had the pleasure of meeting, some 15 or 18 or more years ago in Palmdale. And again, we're all in this together, and it'll be a fascinating process to look at the future of this community and have a hand in how it actually works out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Dell Nelson.
Evening, Planning Commission. Mike, you've done a wonderful job in this city, but in 1991, the Founding Fathers found that Placerita Canyon and Sand Canyon were entitled to the same protection as rural equestrian communities by stating to maintain and enhance the desirable rural qualities found in certain existing neighborhoods which are rural in nature, such as Placerita Sand and Housley Canyon. That's on page L30. Goal number 4.12. Out of that came the special standards districts for Placerita Canyon and Sand Canyon. They're virtually identical to maintain and enhance, to preserve and enhance the rural and equestrian nature of the respective canyons. And also, Melody Ranch is a part of that special standards district. So is the Master's College is an overlay. Sand Canyon currently is protected under this One Vision, One Valley. It's got virtually the same protection. There's no special standards districts yet shown because that's probably going to be a component of the new UDC. But Placerita Canyon is being altered dramatically. It's being stripped. Its protection is being taken. And we fully intend to see that we're protected as we're entitled to be. We're residents of this city. We have been for multiple decades. And to just walk in and strip away that protection is unwarranted. This current One Valley, One Vision is talking about that specific plan like it's already a done deal. Now, in the minds of the planning department, it probably is. In the minds of the residents of Placerita Canyon, it isn't. That rail line that runs up and down Placerita Canyon is not the same as the Gold Line in Pasadena. Right now, Gold Line in Pasadena has every 6 minutes, every 10 minutes. It's quiet. They even fought to have the horns reduced to bells. Now, you with the increase in price of fuel, you're going to have heavy rail transport going up and down that thing. It's blaring away. I live probably half mile to a mile away from that train track. It wakes us up at night. It's nice, but you're not going to put any residences within 60 feet of that line and conform to any noise requirements. It's some thinking needs to be done here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Michael Naum. Might have messed up that name, Michael. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. A minute's pretty tough to get points in, but I'll do my best. I feel like while this is a huge effort, that there's a disconnect that's there between the reality of where we are today and what we envision from a planning standpoint. And while we're trying to do something general with this One Valley, One Vision, we seem to be pretty specific on a few things. One of them is the urban center that will be potentially located at the outskirts of Sand. And, pretty much what we're saying is this is a done deal in this One Valley, One Vision. And obviously, there's a lot of work to be done before that happens. You know, do we really want to, do we need to relocate a Metrolink center there? If you don't have a Metrolink center there, do you have as dense of a development as what's planned? You know, right now, Canyon Country has a Metrolink station. Do we, you know, it works. You know, some people view it as temporary, but everything is temporary these days. We really don't have any idea of whether or not the village concepts are going to reduce traffic. We're saying put the people on Metrolink. Well, Metrolink only goes to a few places. If you work downtown, Metrolink works great. If you work in West LA, Metrolink doesn't work. If you work in the Valley, forget it. If you work in Universal City, forget it. So, you know, it's great to cite your villages there. I think it's helpful, but it's not the total solution. In Santa Clarita, we're saying we're going to put the villages near transportation. In the county, with Newhall Land and Farming, there's no such element. So you have, you know, how they do it and how they can get away without having transportation, and we're doing it, I don't know.
Michael, I know you have a lot to say, but if you can just wrap it up, that'd be cool.
Okay, and I would say that I think the city can come up with a better plan, and one that, while it gives some flexibility, it requires more in the way of project improvements. Perfect example, we're saying we're going to promote bicycling. Why don't we require showers in large employers' facilities? You know, we say we're going to promote energy efficiency. Why don't we require higher energy standards?
Michael, thank you so much for your time tonight. Tom Surek. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, I haven't had a chance to study this in detail, but I did log on to the website. It's not the first time I've seen this map. At least I can see it clearly here. My understanding, and I've participated in many processes in this town, my understanding is this city had a commitment to build an adequate number of parks, and it has been deficient in that area ever since I've lived here for over 9 years. It has these stated goals to achieve, I think, on the order of 1,000 acres of parkland, and it has somewhere in the order of 300 to 400 acres that have gone towards meeting that goal. I pick up a map. I thought what I was going to see is these are the areas that we have committed to dedicating to new parks to meet these objectives which haven't been met. And what do I see? Nothing other than additional development. Nothing for the kids, everything for the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Surek. Okay, that's it we have tonight on public speaking. What I'd like to do now is bring it over to the fellow commissioners so we can talk about this a little bit. But before I do that, I just want to kind of quote what Alan Cameron said, and that's so true, is that we are all in this together. And we're all a team. And I know sometimes you might not feel that way, that we're all working together, but I promise you we are, and we hear everything you say. Diane, I'd love to start with you.
Well, I have quite a few questions, and these were submitted, so I'm not going to ask them all. I tried to avoid the 50 questions, but I went over, so I'll try and be brief. But I did want to raise a few issues. First, let me start by saying that I am also concerned about the special standards districts. I like seeing in here that we want to make sure that there are standards to keep Sand Canyon from becoming more like the traditional tract housing, you know, and there was a project that came before the commission that sort of took it in that direction. So that's a concern, but I share that concern with the Clarita Canyon homeowners. And when we looked at the North Newhall project, in an initial presentation, I think we all agreed that what was presented was much too much. So if we're really looking at trying to incorporate something that is going to be consistent with these neighborhoods, I mean, that's the direction I think we need to go on all of these areas. And I'll raise another question about that in just a minute. In fact, that'll be what I start with, because the map shows us that the Smizer property, North Newhall, Portobello, and North Lake are all adopted specific plans. But that's not the case, and I don't believe North Lake was adopted. And Portobello, I think, would not be current any longer because that was rejected, that plan was rejected.
Actually, Commissioner Trotman, the specific plan for the Portobello specific plan is still in place. There is a development agreement that has kept that specific plan alive. There's two different things here. There's a land use plan that goes along with the specific plan zoning. And that land use plan can deviate from the standard provisions of the Unified Development Code through a specific plan. So similar to what we did with the downtown Newhall specific plan, it really created its own code book of development standards. So just because a property is designated for a specific plan does not necessarily mean there's a land use plan in place. And I think that was the intent of the OVOV land use map, is to identify those areas that would be appropriate for specific plan development planning work, that typical Unified Development Code standards may not be appropriate or desirable, and to designate those areas. For the Whitaker-Burmite project, the Portobello specific plan is currently still in place.
Okay, so for the ones for which it doesn't exist, though, the specific plan is supposed to be detailed and consistent with the general plan. And I can understand where you want to indicate that those are areas where you would consider specific plan. But I think for the purposes of the understanding of people who look at this document, including the public, they need to have an idea of what it is you're looking for in those areas. So I think that there should be an indication that maybe, if you're looking at Smizer property, that you're looking at mixed use and something else and making a notation of that. Otherwise, the public has no idea what is being considered for that, and I think this is supposed to be
That's a
the
great
informing
comment.
document. We need to include that. All right, and I think Sandra mentioned already the floodway in that area. What percentage of the property that's identified for North Newhall specific plan is it all floodway, and which portion of it is within the special standards district that's part of Clarita Canyon?
Yeah, without having it in front of me, I would tell you that most of the North Newhall specific plan boundary is within the Clarita Canyon Special Standards District. In terms of the floodplain maps, those are currently being reworked by FEMA. But I'll tell you, a majority of the floodplain does encompass the North Newhall specific plan boundary at this time.
Okay, and I think it'll be helpful to have an overlay. I liked Ellen's suggestion of the change analysis overlay. I think it'll be helpful to have an overlay of all the flood areas and hazard areas too, or separate maps, but it would be helpful to have that overlay so we can identify and see how we're protecting these areas, or maybe we need to pull back from them. What was the traffic model that was used for calculations for, let's see, page L17? That has to do with the, I guess, the traffic analysis zones. Who designed the model? Has it been updated, and by whom? And using data from what source? Is that information that you have at the ready, or do you need to check with traffic folks on that?
The traffic model is a joint model between the city and the county and now Lennar. The traffic model is updated as projects are approved, usually through environmental impact reports, which updates the information that goes into the traffic model. Ultimately, the analysis for this land use element will come out of the traffic impacts from this land use element will come out of the circulation element when we present that document in draft form to the commission in a couple of months. What we did at this time was we looked at the existing traffic analysis zones. We looked at the existing traffic counts that are in each zone, and we looked at what the projected volumes are within the traffic analysis zones based on the land uses that we have.
And is that a traditional way of calculating population and household counts, or are there other methods? Is this a superior method? And
there's certainly other methods. You could do a straight zoning, the entire city could be zoned at 5 units an acre, and then that many units times that many acres times that many people per household. We felt the traffic analysis zone was the most reliable and the most accurate way to go about the projection.
Let's see. Well, there is mention on page L21, and I agree with that about needing a corresponding increase in the use of mass transit, and I look forward to seeing how that we're going to achieve that in the circulation element. But in the meantime, I think we need to identify in this element additional provisions for Metrolink parking and for park and ride locations. And I agree with what the gentleman said earlier about identifying locations for parks and identifying locations for schools, and that's a question that I had about staff working and Molly working with the schools to identify properties that they own currently or that they're considering purchasing, so we know where the schools would be sited in relation to projected population. I think that that's going to be important because it also has to do with creating additional safety for students in circulation around those projects and around the schools. There wasn't a mention, there are things that we do cultural arts-wise here in this community, but I think that we need to be looking at a cultural arts center, and that should be, I think, a part of economic development efforts, probably even a convention center, and probably located in the Whitaker-Burmite area or adjacent to it on city property. There are events that are scheduled by the city, and we have the Performing Arts Center, but that's insufficient, and I know the mayor's here tonight, and he's talked about moving forward with the arts and trying to expand them, so I'd like to see more worked in about the arts and creating facilities, not just for performing arts, but for visual arts. I don't know how sports tourism was identified as being of particular interest, but I would like to know about that. The other thing, too, is that policies are important. We can provide for bus turnouts and things like that, and we can provide for parking for Metrolink, but we need to have policies in place that are going to encourage people to use mass transit and have policies for expanding mass transit. I know, just anecdotally, my husband was trying to figure out how to get somewhere, and there just weren't enough buses running to get him where he needed to go, even though he could get to Metrolink and get into town that way. If it's not convenient, people are not going to use it. So all of the locations you create won't be much without that other functional structure in place. Well, yeah, there's discussion in here about reduced parking requirements. So again, I think if we're going to talk about reduced parking and we're going to talk about shared parking, we need to talk about increasing bus service and other things in the city and having a proactive agenda on that.
Every trip, every time. Buckle up so you and your friends get home safely. Seatbelts save lives.
Okay.
Visit NHTSA.gov.
That is spectacular advice.
Drugs is a price on top of a price. You pay for it with money. You pay for something you could have had. Then you pay for it out of your life.
Heroin will kill you and crack will bring you to your knees. And crack brought me to my knees.
I'm going to stay with the program of recovery, and I'm not going to give up. I'm just not going to give up.
Before big rig trucks, freight came through the Newhall Pass by train, horse, and mule. But what's the deal with the camels? The Civil War was several years off, and the U.S. Army wanted a way to carry supplies west from Texas. Horses and mules couldn't handle the rigors of the desert, and Jefferson Davis, Secretary of War, believed the rugged beasts of Arabia were just the ticket. Camels came over from the Middle East, and so was born the United States Camel Corps. The animals did a fine job, but they spooked the horses and spit at the soldiers. The grand experiment was headed for the scrap heap of history, but not before Edward Beale, a veteran of the Mexican-American War, led a caravan of 25 camels, 44 soldiers, and 2 camel jockeys across the Arizona desert, stopping first at Los Angeles, then up through the Newhall Pass and on to Fort Tejon at the top of the Grapevine. War was brewing now, and there were more important things for the Army to do than worry about some ornery camels. The beasts were forgotten, but not by Beale, who still hauled supplies back and forth from Tejon to LA on camelback right through the Santa Clarita Valley. Beale ended up letting the camels roam free on his land up the Grapevine. Camel sightings were reported in the Tehachapis and the banks of the Santa Clara River for years. Want to learn more about Santa Clarita Valley history? Click on scvhistory.com or stop by the Saugus train station in downtown Newhall weekends 1 to 4.